I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals for January 26, 2022. My name is Eric Burns. I'm the attorney, and I'm calling it to order for the purpose of calling the roll and having election of president. First of all, the roll. If you would signify aye when your name is called. Steve Clevenger.
Aye.
Gary Schroeder. Gary Schroeder. Michelle Dennis.
Aye.
Ed Butts.
Aye.
Tom Andrew. Tom Andrew. Frank Donaldson.
Aye.
Jen Decker.
Aye.
Quorum present. The first item of business is to open the floor for nominations for president. Are there any nominations for president?
I move to nominate Steve Clevenger for president.
Is there a second?
I second.
Are there any other nominations for president? Hearing none, I would ask for a vote on Steve Clevenger for president of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the year 2022. All those in favor of Steve Clevenger, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? The vote is 5 in favor, 0 against. Mr. Clevenger, the meeting is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. I will now request nominations for the office of Vice President.
I move that Gary Schroeder be nominated for vice president. I second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations for the office of Vice President? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to cast a unanimous ballot for Gary Schroeder for Vice President.
I move to cast a unanimous ballot for Gary Schroeder for vice president. I second.
All in favor of having Gary Schroeder for Vice President, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Gary will continue as our Vice President. I will now request nominations for the office of Secretary.
I move that Eric Burns be nominated for secretary. I second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations for the office of Secretary? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to cast a unanimous ballot for Eric Burns as Secretary of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals.
I move to cast a unanimous ballot for Eric Burns for secretary. I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of having Eric Burns as our Secretary for the Area Board of Zoning Appeals signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Welcome, Eric, as our Secretary. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the December 1st, 2021 BZA public hearing. I second.
Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are approved as submitted. New business. Have none? Okay. I would like to note that the agenda does say 2021. It is actually January 6th of 2022, just to note that. And I would like to briefly read our procedures for the meeting. Each case will be heard following a motion and a second from the board. We'll ask the staff to report on its findings. Following the staff report, we'll ask the petitioner to present his or her case, after which anyone wishing to support the petitioner's request for a variance or special exception will be asked to come forward. After hearing from the petitioner and those speaking on his or her behalf, we will ask those speaking against the petition to present their arguments. The petitioner will then be allowed to rebut arguments raised by those in opposition to his or her petition. Following the rebuttal, the board may wish to ask questions of the petitioner, supporters, and opponents of the petition, or of the staff. The staff will have the opportunity at this time to make any necessary clarifying comments. We will then vote by use of the prescribed ballot. 4 votes are necessary to make any decision. In the absence of 4 votes, either for or against, the petition is automatically continued to the next meeting. Please observe the following guidelines for the sake of time and fairness to all. State your name and address for the record before you speak, and we ask those speaking in favor or in opposition to please sign after you speak at the staff desk over here so that we have your name and address on record. Limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Do not repeat arguments that have been brought up by others. Remember that all visual aids used to support your arguments will remain the property of the board. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. Please step out of the room before using your cell phone. And I'll take the public hearing motion, please.
I move that there be incorporated into the public hearing portion of each application to be heard this evening and to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the Comprehensive Plan, the bylaws of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, the application and all documents filed therewith, the staff report and recommendation on the applications to be heard this evening, and responses from the checkpoint agencies.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. And before we hear the first case, we do have a withdrawn case, BZA 2064. Mark your space. It's Michael Sobel. Several of the variances were denied at the last meeting, and the remaining variance was withdrawn. So if you're here for that, that was the commercial fleet service center down near Dayton. And I will take the first case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2067, Scott and Lori Williams.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. And we'll hear from staff, please.
All right, good evening. So our first case for tonight is BZA 2067, Scott and Lori Williams. So they are requesting to reduce a rear setback not along street frontage to 19 feet from the minimum required 25 feet for the construction of a new deck with a roof structure in A-zone. The property is located here at 7131 US Highway 231 South. The subject lot is zoned A, agricultural, as is all the surrounding property. There is some floodplain here associated with the Little Weeaw Creek to the west, and then some R1 zoning here to the north, but predominantly an agricultural zoned area. The subject lot in question currently has a two-story, can zoom in here a little, a two-story single-family home, as well as they've constructed a new garage. This is an old aerial, so I'll show that a little later. It's bordering to the north and south are also some single-family residences, but the rest, again, of the immediate area is a lot of undeveloped agricultural land. US Highway 231 is classified as a primary arterial per the thoroughfare plan. The driveway will remain as is and provides well over the required 2 parking spaces for a single-family home in the A-zone. Septic and well also serve the lot per the county health department, and no complaints of failure to function have been filed, so everything in that regard looks good. Some things that have slightly changed since the original staff report in November, they have removed the non-conforming old garage here, and they've created a new one here. This one, though, is in conformance with all setbacks, so there's no variance needed now for this new one. So they got rid of this old unconforming structure, which is good. But now they're here because they want to construct as well this new deck roofed structure that you can see in red here on the site plan. This new structure will be 6 feet over the setback line, thus the need for the variance. So staff believes petitioner's desire for a larger deck and roof structure does not necessarily mean the ordinance is creating an unnecessary hardship. For example, stoops may extend up to 4 feet into a minimum rear setback, so shrinking the size of the deck or removing the roof structure would eliminate the need for the variance. However, staff does recognize that the house is over 100 years old and it was there well before the UZO, so that's something to consider as well. Let's see if I have more pictures here. Yeah, so you can see it's way in the back of the house here. I tried to illustrate what the angles were here with these green arrows, if that makes any sense, but they want to put their deck here on this east side of the house. But considering that lot is so large, we also as staff considered could they put it in another location or again have it unroofed or such. So when it comes to the ballot items, the Area Plan Commission on November 17th, 2021 determined that the variances requested are not use variances. And looking at the tests, it is staff's opinion regarding the variance requests that granting these variances will not be injurious to public health. It will not be, neighboring will not be affected in any way. However, the terms of the zoning ordinance are being applied to a situation that is not common to other properties. Again, like I said, the house has been in this location for over 100 years and predates UZO requirements. So the placement of the house near the back of the lot creates a situation that could make it difficult to put any roof structure there where they're desiring to put it. Let's see if I have any other pictures. No. In the end, it was the last hardship here, or the last, test that we couldn't find a hardship. A small uncovered deck could be built, or it could be put in another location. So because of that, staff had to recommend a denial for this. Thank you. Yep. Oh, yep.
Hello, I'm Scott Williams. Address is 7131 US Highway 231 South, Lafayette. Everything that Maureen said, I understand. The situation I'd like to bring up is in the back of the house. The illustration didn't show it very well, but there is let's see, can we go back to the previous one? Yeah. Yes, thank you. If you notice on the back of the house, there is a concrete barrier. So that's a flat area of the house. So that's where the natural property line is anyways. The old structure, as she said, was encroaching extremely on the building setback line, which we have removed that. So that brings us way more into compliance than we were before. Because of the house being so old on the original roof structure, you can't tell it in the picture, but there's a hump in the roof. When we re-roofed it years ago through with our building permit, we had to put new rafters in and sister them to the old rafters, and that created a slight hump. So the new roof line would straighten that out. That's one benefit for the house structurally. And also, as far as trying to move the porch to the south side of the house, as you're seeing here, we have our well on that side, so that would not be possible to do without drilling a new well and moving it. Putting a back porch deck on there is going to help segue. There's the door on the back, our kitchen is there, and that will allow a nice area to go out with family and enjoy the outside. Being as such, we're right on 231. And I don't know how familiar you are with that area, but it's almost like an interstate, very noisy. That is the only side of the property that you have any quiet. So that was another reason. Plus, with the new garage that we've added, with that new deck line, or the deck and the roof line, through our building permit, that would marry all that together and make it a straight continuity for easy access to the back of the house. So that's my 2 cents. This is Dan Harker Road with North Creek Builders. He's my construction guy. So I don't know if he'd like to add anything.
Yeah, well, Dan Harkle Road from North Creek Properties. And the deck, if we only go out 6 feet, 7 feet, it becomes pretty narrow and becomes virtually just a walkway. By making it 12 feet, now they can put the grill and furniture on it, and being away from the highway, like you said, becomes very functional and a much nicer place to be. And this does not impede on anybody for miles in the east direction or north or south. So it would make a lot of sense for them to tie the back of their house together with this nice deck, 12 feet.
Thank you.
It helps if I turn on my mic. Hearing none, we have a ballot.
I have 5 ballots in hand, and the vote is to grant 5-0.
Variance has been granted, and we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2069 Wabash Loss LLC.
You want to go ahead and read the rest of it, please?
Just above it where it says Wabash Loss LLC.
Oh, I read this paragraph.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, correct. Please, thanks.
I didn't for the last one.
Oh, well. I missed it.
All right. Petitioners are requesting a variance to allow 357 on-site parking spaces instead of 480 on-site parking spaces for the Wabash Lofts Apartments in an R3 zone. The property is located at 3680 Paramount Drive, West Lafayette, Wabash 2, Northeast 23-5, Lot 7 in Paramount Lakeshore Subdivision, Phase 1, Section 5, UZO 4-6-3.
I second.
I have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please.
Thank you. David Hiddle with the Area Plan Commission. I'm here with the second and final case for tonight, BZA 2069, having to do with property off of Sagamore Parkway and a little bit west of Morehouse Road in West Lafayette. This is a single-issue case. They're asking for one variance, and there's only one component to the variance. As you can see in the map above, it's circled in red is the subject site. It's a little under 11 acres, and it is zoned R3 for multifamily development, and the petitioner does, in fact, propose to develop a apartment complex, 8 buildings totaled with 240 units. Here you can see an aerial photo. So generally along Sagamore, you have commercial activity fronting the road, and then one layer back you have multifamily residential, and then behind that you have single-family residential, kind of a step down of intensity. As you can see, the lot is unimproved here. This is the initial site plan that was provided. The petitioner did provide a new one this morning, which is one that that should be voted on. The difference is that the original proposed 357 parking spaces, and the new one proposes 378 parking spaces, so an increase of 21. The ordinance requires, in this case, 480 parking spaces, and that's due to the metric requirement of 2 spaces per unit in West Lafayette. Our role here as staff with the BZA especially is to advocate for the zoning ordinance, which is intended to provide for the public good. And we do that. I think that sometimes it can be counterproductive to do that uncritically and blindly, though. This is one of those instances. Our ordinance requires overparking to a substantial extent, and that's something that we're going to be overhauling. That's one of our front burner goals for 2022. So looking at this matter with nuance, we would like to see, I think the public would be better served and the petitioner would be better served by not having to put in a lot of unneeded paved surface. There's a whole litany of reasons for that. But what we indicated in the staff report that we thought would be agreeable middle ground would be to meet the metric that is required of Lafayette. They've actually had their own parking standard for a good long time. It's a little bit more relaxed than the APC's parking standard in that for this case they would need 1.75 parking spaces per unit rather than 2 parking spaces per unit, which would take the requirement for this particular development down to 376. So we indicated in the staff report that if they would meet that requirement, that would represent a good, I think, win-win compromise for everybody. And with this new site plan, they did meet that. So 376 required, 378 provided. So with all that, we're comfortable with what's being presented tonight and recommend support for this variance request. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Edel.
Thank you.
And Eric, do we need a motion to go ahead and amend
Yes, and I did have a question on the report. Is there going to be an amendment, or how would you propose getting the record as straight as it could be?
For the staff report?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can, well, it's in there.
Understood.
It is in there, the language that says if they change it,
Okay.
then we will support it. So the staff report already contemplates that.
Very good.
I think the minutes reflect the fact that these changes have taken place.
Petitioner also submitted an updated petition today with the new numbers, with Chris's signatures on each number being changed, so that's adequate perhaps as well.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I entertain a motion to modify our motion that's on the board so that it allow 378 instead of 367 or 357? I crossed it out.
378.
Let's see,
378,
378,
yeah.
yeah.
I move to modify the request for BZA 2069 Wabash Lofts LLC to be for 378 parking spaces instead of 357.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second, so our request now is for 378. And I will ask for the petitioner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Chris Shellman of Goodway & Law, 250 Main Street, here on behalf of the Ridge Group. I have Craig Whittingham with me on the Ridge Group as well to answer any questions. This is the Ridge Group's second project in the area. The first project was 231 Flats along the new US 231 in West Lafayette. This project is very near to West Lafayette, but just outside in the county, a weird sort of wraparound area, which then leaves us in the 2 per unit parking standard that doesn't reflect the size of the units. This project is comprised of studios, 1 beds, and 2 bedrooms, 73% of which are studios and 1 beds. That's a stark contrast to the student housing-oriented facilities around it, which the Lark, I guess it is now, but the campus suites and Baywater are all 3 and 4 bedroom, stack 'em deep type developments. This is not that, and are geared at a different market. As Mr. Hiddle suggested, the Lafayette standard accounts for different standard for the size of the unit, 1.5 for the 1 bedroom and studio, 1.75 for the 2 beds. We do slightly exceed that. We'd also note that this project provides for more parking than was provided at the 231 Flats. A couple of different areas, but in developers' experience, this will more than meet the need posed by the site, and we're more than happy to take the project back to T-Bird and see what screws they could push to get an overall better project for the developer and the community. We'd be happy to answer any questions and appreciate the staff's input on this project and respectfully request approval.
Thank you, Mr. Shulman. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition? Comments, questions from the board? Hearing none, we have a ballot.
All right, I have 5 ballots in hand, and there are 5 aye votes to grant and 0 to deny.
Variance has been granted. Any administrative matters?
No, sir.
Having no administrative matters, unless any member has an objection, the chair will order the findings of each member casting a vote for the majority decision of the board to be the collective findings of the board in support of the decision of the board. Hearing none, it is so ordered, and I'll take the last motion.
I move to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Efficiency. Amazing efficiency.
This conference is no longer being recorded.